Hey everyone, and welcome back to Happy Hour with HR, a podcast about navigating corporate spaces without compromising your wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mo, and today we're going to be talking about the internal struggle that some of us may come across when we're trying to decide, should I start my own business and leave my life as a W-2 employee, or should I take that full leap and be a W-9 contractor? And so, just to provide some clarification so that we are on the same page when it comes to the terminology being used in this video, a W-2 employee is basically somebody that works for another company, but not as a third-party contractor. And so what happens when you apply for a job, usually when you work for a company, usually the HR paperwork that they give you is, an employee letter, an employment letter stating, your position, how much you're going to be making. And then on the administration side, or the operational administration side, or the HR administration side, they will give you a form called a W-4 form. And you fill out this form, and this is basically letting the employer know how much of your paycheck you want to go towards your taxes, like how much you want the government and the state to take out to go towards your tax contribution, to those two entities. So you fill out a W-4 employment form, and that allows you to receive your W-2. So that's why I refer to people that work for another company a W-2 employee, because they had to fill out that W-4 form. Okay, if you are a W-9 employee or contractor, usually that term is meant for those who manage their own taxes. So that means that when you get paid for completing a service, or for having a client and completing a service, that money, they give you the bulk of the money. They give you the gross of the money. It is your responsibility as a third-party contractor to portion out some of that money to pay towards your federal and your state taxes. So it's your responsibility as a W-9 contractor to manage that tax withdrawal process that goes to the state and to the federal. So that's what I mean by a lot of light, Lord. That's what I mean when I say a W-2 versus a W-9. So those two definitions alone can give you kind of the idea of the world that you are entering into when you decide to start your own business versus when you decide to work for another company. And the reason why I want to really point out those distinctions and to point out those two different worlds is because when you are a W-2 employee, you're coming into a company or an environment in which systems are already set up for you. It's kind of like a plug and play with you. You, for example, you are the project manager for Target. I don't know. You come into Target and they already have things set up for you. Versus when you are starting your own business, being a W-9 employee, you have to create your own system. So you have to see what works and what doesn't work. And that can be very frustrating if you haven't built up your leadership skills or your leadership tolerance, or your frustration tolerance if you haven't really built that up. Because when you are a W-9 employee, you are starting from scratch to build up. Versus when you are a W-2 employee, most of the times you are just entering into an institution that already have systems set up for you. Sometimes those systems may not work, and you as the employee may be able to find a new system that works, but most of the time you have a starting point. And so I wanted to kind of like raise this question of, how do you know when you're ready to start your own business? And because sometimes I feel like we can rush to start our own business because we're so frustrated with our W-2 employer. And I think that is kind of like a naive thing to do. Sometimes I feel like it's a naive thing to do. Especially if you don't know yourself. Like, you could say, ooh, I don't like how they schedule me, or I don't like how they do this, or I don't like how they do that. But you may not know all the information that leadership knows as to why they are doing things a certain way. Nonetheless, you're still feeling that frustration. And so, sometimes what we might do, again, we might say to ourselves, well, I want to start my own business. I want to do my own thing. I want to be my own boss. And therefore we jump into situations in which a high stressful situation at that, because when you're starting your own business, it's not easy. Like I mentioned earlier, you're literally starting from scratch. You are creating the systems. The things that you felt were very annoying that your, supervisor was doing, or leadership was doing, when you start your own business, you might have a better understanding as to why they were doing things a certain way. So again, I want to pose this question of, how do you know when you're ready to start your own business? And from my understanding, what I've learned from, taking like a leap of faith and starting my own business, working for other companies, learning how to merge my business by working as a W-2 employee. But like I was saying, what I've learned from, going on that journey, on that path, is that to know when you're ready, you need to look at your leadership skills and build that up. And you can always build up your leadership skills in whatever position you are in. But you have to really look at your leadership skills. And these are 3 questions that I ask myself, and I challenge you to ask yourself to see if you are ready. The first question is, can you work by yourself? Like I mentioned before, starting your own business, it can be a lonely journey. And you have to be your own leader. You can't rely, and there won't be anybody to tell you what to do. You have to tell yourself what to do, so you have to be your own leader. The second question to ask yourself is, are you willing to learn a new skill? Because when you're starting your own company, you're going to have to learn new things. And if you're not willing to learn how to be a finance manager, if you're not willing to learn how to work in operations, if you're not willing to learn how to be HR, if you're not willing to learn marketing skills, if you're not willing to learn product development and rollout skills, and take on those challenges and like embrace those challenges instead of like kind of like, dreading them, then maybe you need to sit in that whatever company you're in right now and start off slow of taking on new challenges within that company, because they already have systems set up within that company, or they usually would have systems set up within that company, so that if you do try and if you don't necessarily succeed, or you realize you don't really like it, then you kind of have an idea of like where you are at when it comes to starting your own company, and your willingness to take on a new skill. And the third question to ask yourself is, how do you encourage or love on yourself? Entrepreneurship can really take a toll on you, especially when you're doing entrepreneurship as a W-9 employee. And it's a lot of falling and getting yourself back up. It's a lot of learning things that you didn't think you would ever need to learn. And it's a lot of questioning whether or not you might be the right fit for all of this. And so when you go through that journey of being an entrepreneur, of being a W-9 contractor, you really have to learn how to self-motivate, and how to, again, encourage yourself, which goes back to the first point I made about, being a leader for yourself. You really have to understand, how do I encourage myself when I feel like I did not do my best? How do I encourage myself, or how do I love on myself when things are not going the way that I would like for them to go? And so for me, when you know how to be your own leader, you know how to give yourself direction and complete a task, when you know how to take on challenges, and when you know how to self-motivate, that's when I feel you are ready to start. Now, there are other clues, and not clues, but there are other ways that you can know when you are ready to start. But I just wanted to provide this additional tidbit, these tips, so that when people go into entrepreneurial spaces or start that journey, they don't just start it out of frustration because of the current job that they are in. Because trust and believe, you're going to hit a lot more frustration when you start your own company versus whatever frustration you are going with or you are experiencing by working for your current employer. So, because I believe that anybody can start their own business and should at least try to, take on that journey, I just wanted to provide these tips to help people be in the right mental space to start that journey. So again, as a recap, how do you know when you're ready to start your own business and to leave your, 9-to-5 job, or to leave your life as a W-2 employee? The first thing you need to ask yourself is, can you work by yourself? Can you be your own leader? Can you make sure that tasks are being finished? The second thing you need to ask yourself is, are you willing to learn a new skill? Are you willing to take on challenges and embrace the challenge? The third thing that you need to ask yourself is, how do you encourage and love on yourself? And so, in other words, how do you self-motivate? So those are my 3 questions, to ask yourself as you embark on this entrepreneurship journey. And so thank you all for listening. And if you have any additional tips, please leave it in the comment section below. Thank you all, and I'll see you all next time.